Who's Dr. Stinky McDougal?
You mean the legend?
He's a real buckaroo bonsai kind of guy.
I watched him dice a guy into pieces with 6 fucking words.
Stinky's the most inconvenient man in most rooms.
He's a master of drunk boxing.
Every time Stinky calls, my blood pressure skyrockets!
I heard he's staging an evolution.
Dr. Stinky McDougal says the difference between a revolution and an evolution is the conscious choice not to break everything in the transition.
And now, broadcasting from the borderless territory of Liberty Valley, Minnesota, here's your host, Dr. Stinky McDougal!
Yes.
Thank you, baby.
Hey, welcome to the Dr. Stinky McDougal podcast, episode 6. Today, our guest is Dr. Jerry Kroth. He is a professor emeritus from Santa Clara University in California, coming to us today from Puerto Vallarta down in Mexico, which is really interesting. As you know, one of my favorite areas in the world for the catastrophism story is Puerto Vallarta. So that's always a beautiful place. Sometime I'll hope to get down there. The thing that drew me to Dr. Kroth's work is, one, his acknowledgement that crop circles, which has really caught my attention, that crop circles are not just a real manifestation of some sort of phenomenon, but in particular that there were legitimate ways to look at them perhaps as decodable, which is something that actually is said in the Secret Machines Chasing Shadows series by Tom DeLonge and Peter Levenda, that these crop circles are often indicating something. They're like a message. And he captured my attention with that. And so I went in and I reviewed much more of his work. And I discovered that he's actually looking at many of the things that I look at in a very unique way, which is to say his background is as a psychologist. And he approaches many of these things from the psychology of it, if you will. And so how he lays out an issue or an area is very dynamic. I think he presents information for us to look at and evaluate. And like any good professor, he does a good job at not only the creation of his thesis, but the presentation of the information to bring you to a proper understanding, if possible, with the information available. To elevate our understanding of things going on. So with that, Dr. Kroth, can I call you Jerry? Would that be all right?
Yeah, Jerry.
Welcome to the Dr. Stinky McDougal podcasts. What is it that you would attribute? I know I just watched a video of yours where you talk about touching a piece potentially of the Roswell craft fabric, right?
Yes.
And I often think that there's a retrocausality to things, right? Because you were going to get this so right later in your life, you touch something earlier. Is there a possibility that there's, something to your interaction with that piece and your openness today?
Oh, I haven't gone there. But you mean that it transferred some kind of mystical thing into my mind?
Well, any exposure to the unusual, right, to the profound, will always create an expansion.
I didn't go in that way. I was reading a book after a good friend of mine died, and he was interested in UFOs. I was never interested in UFOs. And around 2008, I took a book out of the library in San Diego, and it was reading this guy about Roswell. He said he was there. And then he talked about picking up this foil that was 5 inches by 5 inches that had shape memory. You could crush it and it opened up right. It didn't hold a crease. And then I realized, wait a minute, that happened to me. It happened to me in and it took me a few hours to say, wait a minute, where did that happen in my background? Was it 1963? Was it? So I realized it was I was teaching the 5th grade in 1965. I was 20 some years old. And this little girl brought this to me. And I said, I had that material in my hands. And then I said, wait a second, come on. And then I got more systematic and my PhD skills came out, and I wrote to 100 scientists and said, what was I holding in 1965, it had these properties. And they said, we have no idea. Some people said Mylar didn't fit, Kevlar didn't fit, Hytrel didn't fit, nitinol didn't fit. And then I thought, some people said, you're crazy, or maybe your memories are fault. Memory is faulty. Well, turns out that I found another person in that classroom who's now retired, who's remembered the material.
You found someone.
Yes,
really?
Indeed.
That's incredible.
I cannot tell you more because my daughter is making a video on this, and she's the one who found this other person. Because I was thinking, oh no, maybe I got the wrong school, the wrong class, and maybe and no, this person was in my class. And they said, no, yes, Jerry, you were the teacher, and she brought this material, and we demonstrated it in front of the class. I don't remember that.
And so the people aren't confused. When you say that she brought it to class, this was when you were much younger and you were actually teaching grade school, correct? And that you weren't a PhD yet. You were teaching.
No. I only had a bachelor's.
So this was a kindergartner that brought you this. Is that correct?
No, she was a fifth grader.
Or a fifth grader. Okay.
11 years old. And now those kids are 60 some years old and they're retired. And I found one of them who remembered this. It's strange. I didn't even remember anybody's name in my class. But when you have this material in your hands, you say, somehow your memory cells just say, I remember everything about this. I even remember that my desk was metal. And I tried to punch a hole with a geometric whatever it's called.
Compass. Yeah.
And I remember all of that. I don't remember the girl's name. I don't know what she looked like, but I remember doing all of that.
Do we have a sense on who brought the material, or where it's
I tracked her down. It took me 2 years to track her down. I tracked her down. She said, I don't know what you're talking about.
Oh, wow. Very interesting.
Now, there were 19 girls in the class. So I must have some other person. I still don't have who it was. And I'm not sure the person who said, I didn't know, was, hold on. So maybe she's telling the truth. Maybe I have the wrong person. But I don't remember that. I have to look up 19 people from 50 some years ago.
Yeah, but it is interesting. So was that sort of so when did you start considering things like crop circles and such?
Well, that's how it goes. So people think you're crazy, but let me explain why I'm not crazy. So my interest was in the UFOs and this material. And from that material, I started to think maybe I was actually holding something from Roswell. And then I found 49 people from Roswell who touched this material, and I have them on video, and they describe it exactly as what I held in my hand in 1965. So then I got interested in UFOs, and I started to think, well, I really think this Roswell did happen. And I wrote a book that a second edition that basically comes to the conclusion that yes, UFOs exist. And if you look at all the incidents and all of the people and all the testimony, there are like 520 people who say I saw this UFO, and about 250 of them are experts. They're generals, they're lieutenant colonels, they're navigators, they're professors, they're astronomers. So you do come to the conclusion that UFOs are real. The government is hiding that because they're protecting us from the shock. And that's how I got interested in crop circles. I was like, well, why don't they land on the White House lawn and say, take me to your leader? Why don't they do that? And they don't do that at all. And the reason is, well, I had to come up with a reason. They know that we're relatively primitive and that would freak us out. So they communicate to the elites by sending down a few crop circles every year so that the elites will pick up what they're trying to say. And they're very inscrutable, very difficult to determine. And so a lot of people are making, copies of crop circles that are just junk. But there are a set of crop circles, I believe, that are extraterrestrial messages to humankind.
Mm-hmm. On that note, one of the things, though, that Tom DeLonge and Peter Levenda talk about, is that there is this degree of dualism occurring. And when you look at the crop circle phenomenon in their set of books, again, Secret Machines Chasing Shadows, I believe, they point to the fact that when you go to the really true crop circles, you find that inside the circle, there's actually an increase of bug life, of insect life, and that although the stalks have been turned down, they haven't been harmed. They all still grow to full maturity and are as edible as any other without showing any signs of change. And so the difference in those crop circles is that if they are for the elite, they're doing an awful nice job of not harming anything or anyone around them. And they're leaving messages of some sort. What brought you to decode these crop circles, and what one do you think tells us the most about the source of those crop circles?
Well, I read a mathematical physicist who had studied crop circles. I read a publication called Science News. It's a magazine that comes out for scientists, and he wrote to Science News as a scientist saying, "Gentlemen, you have 248,000 subscribers. Here are 19 crop circles that express Euclid's 13th theorem, except Euclid only had 12 theorems. And he didn't know about diatonic ratios. And here is his 13th theorem. Now, I believe this came from an alien intelligence, and if you can refute it, please do." And I was curious about who this guy is. And he was retired, so he didn't have to deal with the scandal. But that, plus a few others, serious people, made it seem like, no, these things are not just abstract drawings. They are really encoded, deeply meaningful things that are pedagogical, that are educational, that are teaching human beings about things. So then I started my own work, and I actually found a guy in Australia who's a PhD from Caltech. He calls himself Red Collie, but his name is, I won't mention his name. I think he doesn't like it mentioned. Anyway, he did some decoding of vitamin A, a crop circle showing the molecular structure of vitamin A. Who in God's name would do that?
Right. Yes. There are many subjects. Vitamin A is not one.
But it was like the size of a football field. Now, what kind of an idiot would do that? And I thought, well, maybe it's not a human idiot who did it. And then I said, what is vitamin A? What is it? Is that important? And then I realized you don't even know enough about vitamin A. You better read about it. And I realized vitamin A deficiency is related to pregnancy, it's related to intelligence, it's related to fertility, it's related to skin, it's related to all sorts of diseases. And 14% of the human race is vitamin A deficient. This was a message saying, why are you allowing 14% of your population to suffer a vitamin A deficiency when you don't need to? And I said, well, who sent that message? So basically that led to my book called Messages from the Gods. I got 44 crop circles, which I felt were extraterrestrial messages, mostly pedagogical.
Define what pedagogical means for us.
Educational.
Ah, there you go.
Meaning we're going to teach you this. You should know about this. Pay attention to this. There's going to be an event take a look at it. And there are some that are about global warming. Here are some here's a picture of the molecular structure of a gas that's a greenhouse gas. There's a perfect crop circle that depicts methane down to the electron. So why would someone make a 60-meter thing in someone's field that depicts methane? Because methane is poisoning the earth.
It is. It is. That's absolutely true. That's interesting. Now, one of the crop circles that you did a video on as well argues that the COVID-19 virus was put into a crop circle. Tell me more about that. I'll put a picture of that crop circle here in the video for people.
I'm glad you did, because if you look at the tail of that, I looked at it, I said, I've never seen a crop circle look like that. It looked like a splash of something. It looked like a cell. And then there was this thing hanging down from the bottom of it. I said, what the hell could that be? And then I realized, this is at the very beginning of COVID epidemic, those are spike proteins. And what they did with the blob on the bottom was magnify a single spike protein so we could see it.
Wow.
And so that's why there's a blob at the bottom. And I wondered, what the hell is inside the blob? And there were 8 little 4x4 circles. And I wrote, of course, I don't know what I'm talking about. So I write to professors of biology, and I don't tell them I'm doing crop circle research, or they'll think I'm crazy. But if I say I have a PhD from Santa Clara University and I'm a professor emeritus, they usually answer my questions. So I said, what is inside of a spike protein? Are there 8 things in there? Are there 4 things in there? They said, well, it's a peptide. I don't know what a peptide is. So that interaction caused me to develop it. And it was like, I thought that this crop circle was telling us about an antidote for COVID-19. But I think I'm changing my mind. What are you smoking?
Well, it's the Dr. Stinky McDougal podcast, so I'll smoke a little weed from time to time.
I see.
I hope it's not a problem. I tried to, I unmuted so the camera would only be seen by you, but most of my viewers know I smoke weed from time to time.
Wait. So now I'm changing my mind, and I think they were telling us that the COVID spike protein has been genetically manipulated in a laboratory.
Actually, you are 110% correct. If I stretch my brain correctly and I recall, there are in that spike, there are these receptor, whatever they call them. And they said in order for it to have 8, like it had to have been manufactured, because 8 doesn't show up anywhere in nature. So it had to have been manufactured. And that was actually in one of the early emails between Fauci and other researchers trying to determine whether this was of natural origin or man.
I still haven't figured out what the 8 is. What are the 8?
Oh, it might be the peptide, but if you I'll send you a link and I'll throw it in here so the folks know what I'm talking about.
I'm right on the cusp, but I haven't been able to tie it down.
Yeah, this will blow your mind. I'll knock it out of the park for you. Yeah. That we'll put it in a video.
And so 8 million people died from COVID in the world.
I'm of the let's go back over to the UFO question, because I do know that you've done some videos on the disclosure events that are occurring in Washington, D.C., the releases of video from a variety of individuals. Let's kind of start at a basic level. What is your sense of what the phenomenon is about?
Well, I have a good friend who is a UFO person who is very, very intense in term. He believes in UFOs, but he also refutes almost every UFO story I send to him. I said, "What do you think about this?" He said, "It's bullshit." "What do you think about this?" "It's bullshit." So it's like, you say so much is bullshit. I'm beginning to think you're a debunker. And he isn't. He saw a UFO when he was 18 years old, but he thinks that there is so much crap out there that he's extremely skeptical. So I send him all of my data. Basically, he's my filter, and he tells me this is likely and everything else is not likely. So David Kroth, who I like a lot, the guy he says he's mentally ill. He's never seen a UFO. He's never touched extraterrestrial material. He's only engaged in hearsay. He's reporting what someone else told him, who told him something. And so he creates doubts in my mind about this man. And yet I want to believe him. I believe that what he's telling me is true. I believe that he is not mentally ill. He had a security clearance, for Christ's sake, top secret. And they're kind of trying to smear him. And there's a whole set of senators and congressmen who want to keep the lid on this thing. And he's trying to come out with it. And my friend and I are basically disagreeing with each other, because I believe that David, I don't know how to pronounce his last name, Grush,
yes.
I think he's telling us the truth, and I think that that the Pentagon is doing everything they can to stop him. And like the senator or the congressman from Ohio, from Wright-Patterson, is opposed to disclosure. Well, why the hell are you exposed? Because you're trying to you're getting paid to say no. Anyway, I was very hopeful. I'm down. I think the Pentagon is winning in keeping this all a secret, and in smearing David Koresh. But I think he's telling the truth.
I sense he's telling the truth as well. He does say that he has some personal experience on the matter that he was finally able to start talking about. And, that portion of his recent reveal was a fascinating conversation if you haven't had a chance to look into it. In terms of what has been revealed, there's a lot of back and forth over whether or not we have a functioning craft. Do you think we have functioning crafts? How far have we gotten with the technology?
I think that all the story of Roswell is true. So I do believe that they recovered one craft and they took it to Wright-Patterson, and there it is. And they have it. And I believe they have the bodies too. They have 4 bodies, maybe 3 bodies, of aliens from a different whatever solar system, and they've been holding it secret all these years because, for good reason. It's not because they wanted to exploit the military significance. They know that to say this, to tell people that it's true, will mess up the minds of people in the world and the religions and philosophies. People will be very disturbed. It's no longer a fantasy. It's not a Star Wars movie. It's true. And that will destabilize societies and religions and peoples throughout the globe. And that's why it's held secret. It's not a frivolous reason. It's a fundamentally good reason.
A number of people... Go ahead.
Well, Copernicus said the sun the Earth revolves around the sun. Okay, the Earth is not the center of the solar system. It took 450 years before people finally said, "Oh, okay, that's all right. We believe that." The Pope, I mean, it was not something that happened overnight.
No, it took several generations, for that kind of change to be effectuated, and many, stone walls to break down. Some folks have actually characterized what's going on with the brush that says what's going on has been going on since the very beginning, that they've been here the whole time. Do you have thoughts on that?
I think they have been here the whole time, all the way back to ancient Egypt. I don't think the pyramids were built by Pharaoh Khufu. I think they were inspired and designed by alien intelligence in cooperation with human beings who carried the stones and put them in the right place. But Egyptian society was not sophisticated enough in 4500 BC to create and design these structures.
Some folks have suggested that they're electrical in nature. Do you have a sense of what the pyramids are about, or what the obelisks are about, or any of the structures mean?
They're multi-meaning. The orientation is reflective of the Orion Nebula, the star system from Orion. You know that or not?
Yeah, I'm familiar with that. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so
yep, aligned with the Orion's belt.
As if they're pointing to their origin. But if you look at Orion, there are 3 stars in the Orion belt, and they're very far from each other. They're close only in our minds, but they're a few hundred light years from each other. So where did they come from? Did they come from that star or that star or that star? But the mathematics of the pyramids is incredible. The placement of the pyramids is central to the entire planet. There are many, many factors in understanding the mathematics and the design of the pyramids. And it's not a simple singular message. It's like, this is something for human beings to understand for millennia. And that's why they were created. It's not the sarcophagus is not holding a body of some pharaoh, in my view.
Yeah, no, it doesn't make very much sense. As many people have pointed out, there seems to have been some other purpose for the sarcophagus.
Yeah, there was a construction guy from the United States, and he went and measured the sarcophagus with his slide rule.
Mm-hmm.
He said, nobody can make that even now.
Yeah.
I wrote to a couple granite makers, and I said, here are the dimensions. Could you make this for me? One guy in Miami said, I'm sorry, we couldn't do
that. Yeah, no, these structures around the world, and I've done a number of videos on them. The stories that go with them are always so fascinating. Out in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, you've got Nan-Madol, and it's said that the twin brothers Olisapa and Olosapa showed up, and after setting up an altar to the agricultural god, a dragon then flew through the sky and set up the entire city of Nan-Madol in the middle of the Pacific Ocean for them. A dragon.
Yep. I never heard this story in my life.
Yeah, and so you get glimpses of the technology and the mythology of these people, but it's the cargo cultishness of it, the dragon, rather than being able to describe it.
Did you say the cargo cultishness?
Yes, the cargo cultishness. Cargo cults are a specialty of mine.
I want to bow to you and show you how much I respect you for saying that. You are a very educated person. You know what you're talking about. I'm going to have to check on the vaccine now. You said the cargo cultishness. Oh, and not many people know what you're saying, but I do.
I have several videos on it. It's the mythology that I've worked through speaks a lot to an event in history. And
Yeah.
so the more you understand what it's talking about, the more you start to understand the nature of how the text was written, right? And who wrote it. And so that's just one of the things that I do. But yeah, no, and it's the cargo cultishness of what happens in our description of these ancient cities that just don't make sense around the world, right, can only be explained if you begin with the proper first thesis. Was there someone here with an advanced ability in ancient time?
Yes.
Yes.
Now, let's stop here. When you say cargo cultishness, my respect for you goes up 1,000% because it means that primitive people encountered a very highly technical and technologically advanced person, and they developed a superstition and a religion and a mythology about it, and that is the template for everything that we have done with gods and theology and our mythology. We are, with the Pope wears a hat that goes way up like this. And so did Akhenaten wear a hat in the Egyptian hieroglyphs. And they're just imitating the aliens who had large heads. It's a form of copycat behavior, and they formed the skulls of their children to have swollen craniums.
I think the swollen craniums were actually the other non-human intelligence. When we say there was someone advanced, it was those with the swollen cranium. The hat was worn, you're right, the hat was worn as a religious affectation because it granted them the power of God. It's the cargo cultishness of it.
All right.
In fact, what's interesting is that same hat is worn. I just did a video on this. Is worn in a Christmas festival where goats, evil maniacal goats, pull the sled of Santa, and the Santa that's in it is wearing a big pointed red hat, right? Yeah, and so these do all have a symbology to them that if you'd like to discuss sometime, I'd love to talk about because
so the mummies in Peru that they've discovered with the big heads, skulls, and the big-headed skulls in Siberia, and the big-headed skulls that you find in Egypt, they're not aliens.
No,
that's the cargo cultishness attempting to imitate the aliens who came here. Yes or no?
So if you look back,
you interviewed me, but I mean that's one question. Yes or no?
So my answer is going to be my research says unlikely.
Oh.
But that there is an answer I think that might resonate with you, and that is that the Bible talks about there being 3 original genetic lines, and so you've got Ham, Shem, and who's the third one?
The three kings.
No, there are 3 genetic lines, and it escapes me right now. But in any case, one of the arguments that Peter Levenda makes is that what we're looking at are 3 original races of humans on Earth, right? We hear that in North America, we have these giants. And so because there are giants we found the bodies. We know there are giants. We've seen the bodies. In Wisconsin, the newspaper covered it. There were pictures of 9 and 10-foot men, right? And so it's an example of a different race from us. We also then had the large skull race that you find in Paracas, and then you have the standard, what you would call, human, which we would represent. The idea is that we may be looking at 3 different species originally. All 3 still may be here.
I don't go there. No, but fine. But can I go back to your thesis? Go. I mean, I'm sorry. I don't want to waste your time. But
No.
cargo cultishness means I am going to imitate the people who came here so that I can claim that I'm one of them and I have their power. And so I'm going to raise my children with these elongated skulls from Siberia to Peru to Egypt from over 10,000 years. But these are not aliens. These are human beings who are imitating the aliens.
Not imitating. No, actually, there's recent DNA work done that I read. I'll stick it in here for folks.
That guy has a bachelor's degree in biology. He does not. He's an idiot.
Well, what I find interesting is that I have seen more than one DNA report. I know the Atacama small hominid has been said to simply be human in nature, but I actually interviewed the director of that video, of that movie that was created by Dr. Stephen Greer, Amadip Kalika. I actually interviewed him. I sat down with him. I asked him about the findings. I asked him about the DNA, and this is not a human corpse. And so whatever game is going on, this is the disinformation that's so difficult and is so corrosive to us understanding what's going on. And so, there's lots of things like this occurring, and we dismiss all of them as hoaxes. Well, the scientists are showing us, scans with, breastplates plated and eggs in their stomach, in other examples going on right now. And the breastplate has an element in it that is so incredibly rare and so expensive. It's like they asked the question, look, if you were going to hoax this, why would you spend the money on this element? There is no reason to spend the money on it if you're hoaxing it.
Well, I can't answer that question.
Yeah,
but I think these Peruvian mummies that were just found are hoaxes.
Well, I think time will tell. And, I'm going to keep an open mind until I get a chance to examine, more of the scientific data. I did see the video, which included the x-rays and such. And, I find them compelling enough to remain open until I get a chance to examine, more direct information.
Okay, listen, we're supposed to end at 6:30, and are we going to end at 6:30?
I've enjoyed our conversation, and I don't need to extend us any longer than you'd like to if you have other plans. But I have very much enjoyed our time, and we can definitely wrap up. Do you have any last thoughts that you'd like to share with folks? Anything you're working on that you think is interesting?
No, I just want to say, when you said cargo cultishness, I knew that I was with a simpatico person, and very, very few people I meet who I feel a sense of closeness to intellectually. We have disagreements, obviously, but it is wonderful that you invited me here. I really enjoyed talking to you.
Well, thank you for coming on this Dr. Stinky McDougall podcast here tonight. Everybody, I'll leave links down to his website in the space below. Please check out his YouTube channel and his videos. I do mean it. He has some interesting stuff to say on a lot of different topics. We didn't even talk about the Kennedy assassination. So, Dr. Kroth, I got to get you back on here sometime for an interview in the future. Everybody, peace out. Have a good night.
Okay, thank you.